Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 23rd Masterclass organized by EdTech Society of India. This is Krishnakant Roy, member of EdTech Society, going to the host of the day. Before I introduce our today's speaker, let me briefly talk about the EdTech Society of India. EdTech Society is a professional non-profit association started in India by individuals who are committed to improving instructions and learning through the use of education technologies. EdTech Society members are researchers, developers, practitioners in the field of education technology. This includes higher education faculty, graduate students, instructional designers, education technology tool developers, school teachers, government, corporate, and military trainers. The society organizes many events and activities like masterclass, in-focus interviews, prospective industry talks, and international conference known as T4E conference, Technology for Education. This year, T4E conference will be held on December 6th to 8th at IIT Gandhinagar. You may visit the EdTech Society website to get more details about the conference and other programs. Now, let me introduce today's speaker of the masterclass, Dr. Ashutosh Raina. Dr. Ashutosh is an expert in education technology, holding a doctorate from IIT Bombay. His contributions have been towards innovation in design of learning environments, pedagogy, and curriculum. He specializes in active learning and is currently working on sustainability focused education with the Grand Challenge Impact Lab India at University of Washington, Seattle. As a visiting assistant professor at Laksha University, he was a part of redesigning the Sustainability Development Studio course for engineering students. Beyond academia, Dr. Rana's work has significantly impacted over 35,000 learners through the SWAM course, demystifying networking and 10,000 schools across India through AI module development for Atal Thinker Labs. His contributions during the COVID pandemic assisted a seamless online educational transition for engineering students. With a strong research background in learning environment design, Dr. Rana advocates for the hands-on, inclusive, technology-aided education practices and has led a number of training workshops in India and abroad. I welcome Dr. Ashutosh on behalf of EdTech Society and request Dr. Ashutosh to deliver his talk. Dr. Ashutosh.
Thank you, Krishnaka. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining for the 23rd Masterclass of EdTech Society. And so the topic of today is learning beyond borders, which is problem solving through tinkering, agency, and empathy. As we begin, a few things to note. So what I'm going to talk during this masterclass, so this is a story of my experiences as an education researcher. So the objective of this talk is to share these experiences and enable you to get one of your own if you want to. The things that are being discussed are published. If they are mentioned. Otherwise, they are basically my observation and experiences that I have had. And most of the work that I talk about is work in progress. But again, isn't that the case with everything in the world? Yep. Okay. So, brief introduction about myself. I am Ashutosh Raina. I work in learning design and research. This is a grab of my information page. If you want to know more, you can go to Google and search for Ashutosh Raina. So, talking about learning design. So, whenever you are designing for learning, you are ideally looking at these four aspects, which is what is the learning objective, what is the pedagogy we are going to use, how will we orchestrate the learning, and how are we going to assess the learning, right? So if you were a learning designer, say in the 19th or the 20th century, you would be doing all of that for a classroom. And what I mean by classroom is an enclosed room with a podium and a row of seats. Now, that was based on the requirement of that time. That was how the learners were being trained for the workforce. But now, as time has changed, and with the in new discoveries, new inventions, and also the new insights into learning sciences, and cognitive sciences, we realize learning is not just confined into the borders of a classroom. Learning happens even beyond the borders of a classroom, and it has not just changed how learning happens, it has also changed certain aspects about learning, like different modalities. Now the location matters. What is what is the immersion, or what is the immersive experience of your learning? Is the learning a part of your curriculum? Is it co-curricular, extracurricular? And the learning itself, so what type of learning is it? Is it just some concepts, a cognitive fact? Is it procedural? Are there some skills involved? Or is it socio emotional or emotional learning? Are the students building confidence? So now, if we look at, say, location and immersion, and we try to draw a quadrant, we can have in class learning and out of class learning. And on the other axis, we can have simulated or theoretical learning and real world learning. Now, if we look at this quadrant, so anything which is a lecture would be simulated or theoretical in class learning. So if we would look at a MOOC or a virtual course, it is out of the standard class definition, but it is still towards a simulated or theoretical learning. Whereas projects are more close to what the real world is. Similarly, if we take field trips and internships, so these are some scenarios where you are learning in the real world and out of class. So my educational practice and research interests lie in this region that I have highlighted. So now let's take a minute and think. Are there scenarios where majorly the learning happens out of the classroom, or it is in the real world? Here's one, which is sports training, which happens in the real world and out of classroom. So this brings us to the first part of the talk, where I'll be talking about experiencing the physical world. And I'll be doing this based on one of the projects that I did, which was building a training system for learning badminton shots, or what we call combat, which is corrective myo badminton trainer. So, what are the challenges in learning a badminton shot? So, when you play a shot, there are certain parameters which are abstract, like when you're swinging your arm and the effort you apply to swing your arm. So these are abstract parameters, some things you feel. So what Combat did was we use certain we use certain sensors to help you visualize these parameters. So let me show you a small demo of it. So you would wear something called a myo band, which senses muscular activity and the forces the band feels, and you play the shot. So as you play the shot, there is a certain feedback that you get on your effort and swing, and also you receive some haptic vibration. So if you have played the shot well, you get two markers which are green, which say good effort and good shot. And it also provides you visualization which compares your performance to an expert's performance. So what you are doing here is you are able to visualize the physical forces and the abstract nature of these concepts. And if you did not play the shot well, you could compare your performance to an expert. So this is what Combat was about. Just to give you a brief idea of how Combat works, the band basically talks to a system which takes all the raw data, compares it to an expert's data, and generates visualizations as well as the visual feedback. Also, the system communicates back to the Maya band and generates the haptic vibrations. So what we did is we ran the system with a number of participants, some of them experts and some of them novices. And what we realized is that experts tend to look at the visualizations and take feedback from the visualizations more than the novice. And your next shot would improve or remain the same 91% of the times if you looked at the visualizations, versus it was only 50% of the time when you did not look at visualizations. And as I said, expert tended to refer the visualizations more than the novice. What other interesting thing we saw was that the experts can maintain their performance even in the absence of the racket and the shuttle, which was not the case with the novices. So, what can we take away from this? So, basically, visualizing abstract concepts enhance their understanding, and technology is able to bridge that understanding of the physical abstract experience. Visual feedback is a promising tool for insight into actions. You are able to relate these abstract natures to how the action was performed by you. Novice, novice learners require support to associate their actions with the visualizations, and experts retain performance without the tool or the contextual aid. As I said, experts were still able to perform better without the racket or the shuttle as well, if asked to play a shot. So these are certain things that can help us in developing systems for, say, sports. And if we look at such systems, these systems would lie here in the quadrant, which is to some extent in class, where you would get some feedback on how you are performing and what is the right way to perform, but a lot of it in the real world and out of class, getting continuous feedback. Again, let's take a minute. So now we know that technology can greatly assist in visualizing abstract actions and concepts. Could you think of, say, learning physics with it, especially making things that are invisible more accessible to you? But what about directly engaging with the physical world to explore, experiment, create, and discover? So that brings us to the next point, which is designing to nurture experiences in a physical environment for problem solving. And for this, I'll be taking the research I've done for my doctoral research, which is nurturing tinkering to solve engineering design problems. So, when we talk about nurturing tinkering, let's first look at what is tinkering or how can we define tinkering. So let's be with this question for a while. Excuse me. So while teaching online, I would want to write something and present it live or record it. Okay, like I mean, as we are doing right now. But I want a system. Imagine this to be, I mean, the time COVID hit and everybody was at home. So how can I have a system which helps me do that? So we had to take classes, but we did not have all that equipment. So we saw a lot of quick fixes. We saw different ways so that we can, be able to place a camera at one point and record, write something below it and record it at the same time. So I would call it the quick fix or what the jugaad approach is. But if we think about it, doing the same thing day in and day out, it's not very sustainable and a very easy practice. I mean, there are a lot of challenges. And at the same time, if you look at what a standard solution is, probably that's not available. Or that for in certain cases, that might not be a feasible thing to acquire. Or you might want something which is more custom to what you want to do or the way you want to design your system. So could you find something which is, not just a quick fix, but also sustainable in some sense? So to do that, what would we do? We basically look at what our core objective is and what are all the components that we will need to achieve our objective. So basically our objective is that we want to place the cell phone at some point where we can record whatever we are writing. And to do that, so what I need is I need an elevation and a sturdy place to keep my phone, right? So once we have these objectives in our mind, what we do is we look at one, what do I want to do? That is place the phone at some height and have some elevation. And two, what are the things that I have that can help me achieve this goal? I mean, I started with some books and uh, pane of glass, but that's not very sustainable. So I started looking around and see, okay, what are the other things that can help me do the same thing? And through multiple iterations of these, we can evolve this. For example, let's take this particular example. Now, there is a pole which is sturdy enough to give me that elevation, but the material, the wire, is flexible enough to be bent in a certain way, but hard enough to support the phone. But as I get more resources, I can even keep refining my solution towards a better solution. So, this continuous cycles of experimentation, play with materials is something, and evolution of your solution is something what tinkering is. So, basically, we defined it as evolving a solution by building experiences of exploration and play. Now, can we design something so that tinkering happens? I mean, definitely we have to go beyond assembly instructions and manuals, which usually come with most of the tinkering kits. Tinkering is an attitude that needs to be nurtured. Like, if we take a plant, we create the correct environment for it to grow. Similarly, if we create the conducive environment, we have seen that tinkering happens. So, how do we create that conducive environment? So, there are certain factors of the environment. Think so. Different things like what is the immediate, what are the resources that are in the environment? How is the environment set up? Does the environment provide you immediate feedback? What I mean by immediate feedback is if you have certain material, you'd work with something, so you get to see the response of what you have done. So if you fold a paper, you immediately get a feedback that now it's a different shape. There are other factors like fluid experimentation, which allows you to experiment in number of ways. Open exploration, it allows you to uh, build different material, take your ideas, build certain things. Then the other factor that we look at is what are the tasks. So if an environment provides open-ended tasks that allow me to add my flavor or my thought into the task. If the tasks gradually complicate, we start with simple tasks and then we gradually give them complex tasks. And the entire experience has tasks which are low floor, high ceiling, and wide walls, which means the first task is very easy to complete and it can be done very quickly. Whereas there are tasks which are complex enough for me to be able to sit there for hours and spend a lot of time. And wide walls means I can achieve the same task in number of ways. So you're giving you're giving them a lot of freedom. Now, what are the actors for in the environment? Let's say mentors. So the mentors need to focus on processes rather than the end product. You should always give a lot of examples, diversity of examples. If you have to really design the space to complement whatever the actions that are you expect to be performed in the space. You need to encourage engagement with the material. You need to probably design prompts, design certain actions in the space so that learners interact with the material a lot. Whenever you see learners are stuck, you know they ask you something, the tendency to help should be more like posing questions than giving direct answers. And also the mentor should be able to get the learners dive into the concept or dive into the building and also take a total view of what is happening. So these are certain factors that influence tinkering. So now I'll talk about tinkery, which is a learning environment that I built with my research. And tinkery, basically the name comes from nursery where you nurture plants. So tinkery is nurturing tinkering. So the context of tinkery is that it is limited to engineering design problems in educational robotics to be solved with Lego Mindstorms. We chose Lego Mindstorms because Lego Mindstorms has been built on the basis of tinkerability. And these problems were being solved in this learning environment, which was designed through expert data analysis, exploratory evidence, and literature on making and tinkering. So what would be the problems like? Build a bot that can travel from point A on a tiled floor to go to point B, or build a bot that can cross a particular given obstacle and probably climb a ramp. So these were the kind of problems. I mean, these look like standard hackathon type of problems. So now we'll talk about the learning environment. So this is the learning environment, and the different features that it had were, we had designed a pedagogy which was specifically for this learning environment. We had certain demos of some equipment that we have in the learning environment. Now the arrangement, as I was talking to you, how do you design the physical space? Now the arrangement, because all your problems were about creating bots of certain function. So all your resources were kept based on their functional approach. For example, there were components you build with, there are components you connect with, there are components that allow you to create motion, wheels, gears, something like that. There are sensors and actuators and power cords. So all of them have been kept in different regions of the space. Then you have something called partial manipulables, or some half built or semi built structures or examples. So, what we realized when we looked at experts is they always tend to keep old or unfinished projects around them. And that is very essential because that gives you certain ideas. So, based on that, we designed three manipulables which were a bit relevant to the kind of problems that we were giving, and they varied in complexity. Like, so this was a very simple small construction, and whereas these two were complex constructions involving small components and a complex motion. The other thing that we had designed were problems. So what were the problems that they had to the learners had to look at? So there were series of problems, as I said. They varied in complexity. So what do I mean by complexity? The decision variables required to solve the you required to control to solve the problem, and the number of components that are required. So your initial problems would require like a single component, or we rather called it a challenge, and just one decision variable to work with. And eventually, as time progresses, we increase the complexity of the problem. Now, this allows the learners to, you know, use multiple components to actually build what they want to. So the complex problems are not straightforward in terms of use this component and combine it this way, and it happens. So now let me talk about the pedagogy. So the pedagogy focused on three primary tasks, which is one, that is explore. That so in the phase of explore, the learning environment, the task, everything is designed for the learner to go and look at different components, explore what is possible with those components, what are the different ways you can use that component. In the solve phase, the task, everything in the learning environment is designed so that you are you are supposed to achieve a certain function using the components that you have explored. So basically, you're trying to play between what the components can do and whatever your idea is. So you're taking the idea and trying to build it in the physical using the components. And as you are doing it, what you are doing is as you build your idea with the components, you get feedback of whether the way you thought has the physical object turned out that way, and that feedback helps you evolve the solution further. Rather, what are other things that you can do with it? You can make certain actions on whatever you have built, and that also allows you to understand, okay, what are the different new things that you can build in this particular idea that you have built in the physical space to make it much better. Now, talking about how this entire learning environment was designed, we use something called design based research. Now this is much relevant for someone who is looking into designing learning environments. So what design based research does is it helps you in designing, developing, and evaluating pedagogical solution, say the learning environment. And at the same time, it also helps you identifying certain design principles and local learning theories, which would be, so if you were to design a learning environment, the question would be, how is learning happening in the learning environment? One is the learning environment working? And the second would be, how is learning happening in the learning environment? So I'll quickly take you through the phases, which is, first we initially did literature review, we talked to experts, and through all of that, we designed the first version of Tinkery. Then we planned a study with it. We conducted a workshop, we had participants, and then we analyzed the data. And what we saw was that we see that tinkering is happening, but there are certain challenges. And what we see is in this idea, how, so now talking about how people solve problems is, they are basic, what we see is they are able to build their ideas in the physical space and take actions in, perform certain actions on the idea. So again, we did another cycle of this. We built the new version of Tinkery and again did a study with it. And then we saw is that uh, these actions that the learners do on their ideas, they help them gain certain insights which helps them evolve their solution faster. And also we also saw that the learners were persisting, they gain conceptual knowledge, they gain confidence and agency into this process. Now one question that would be is, so how did we analyze or how did we come to know whether, whoever was in the learning environment, they were tinkering, and how did we get to know, you know how is learning happening in tinkering, in their learning environment, sorry. So we use something called conjecture maps, and this is again for someone who is trying to design learning environment. So to briefly explain, basically there are three components to it: an embodiment, mediating process, and outcomes. Embodiments, you could look at it like certain features, certain things that you have designed in the learning environment. Then these features can actually help you in certain processes. So these are called the mediating processes, and these processes basically lead to an outcome that you expect, right? So these are the three stages. So what we do is we create conjectures from whatever features you have, and how do those features aid certain processes, and then we also create conjectures on how do these processes come together and define the outcome. So we try to find evidence for it. I'll give you an example. So this is a conjecture map of Tinkery. So I talked about partial manipulables, right? So we had that partial manipulables offer multiple approaches to solve a given problem. So that would be an example of a design conjecture. And similarly, now there are a set of mediating processes like offer multiple approaches to solve problems, troubleshoot iteratively, develop workarounds, builds confidence, which is an outcome. So what we would do is we would look at the study data, we would try to find evidence. Like here, what you see is different participants solved the same problem one and problem two in different ways. Even though they had the same material, they had the same manipulables and everything. And also at the end of each workshop, what we do is we interview the participants, and through the interview, we realized that all the participants spoke that they have confidence in working on similar problems. Now they have built the confidence, there is this difference. So through such different so we can collect evidence through such means, and this evidence happens to come through various participants and a lot of times. So through that, what we can define is that yes, we have evidence for these conjectures, hence we can say okay, the learning environment is working. And when we look at this data, we are also able to get to know more about how learning is happening. So coming to the takeaways of it, so takeaway on how does learning how does a learning environment lead learners to tinker. So if the learning environment provides opportunities of playful exploration, tangible actions, iterative troubleshooting, ability to work around, agencies of material use, which is basically allowing you the freedom to use material the way you want, and opportunities to take multiple approaches with availability of assistant, we see that learners persist to reach solutions, they gain conceptual understanding, and they have developed confidence, sense of pride and agency in solving the problem. Now, what are these features that we should know about in a learning environment in order for it to nurture tinkering? So, as I was talking about problems, resources, pedagogy, scaffolds, and mentors, so if you gradually increase the complexity, have low floor, high ceiling, wide walls, and situate the problem in a real life context, tinkering can happen. So, I mean, as a teacher, what could you do? Say you have a programming lab. So, your first task could be very simple, where it is very easy to achieve. But there can be tasks which are way more complicated, so that someone who probably is into programming already also is engaged. and the same solution can be achieved in multiple ways. Now you can have the problems built in such a way that they are relatable. For example, there are problems from their day-to-day lives. Now, if you talk about resources, I'm saying the resources should be tinkerable. I mean, one of the programming languages we know of is Scratch. Similarly, if we design the pedagogy, scaffolds, and what a mentor does in these manner, we can ensure that tinkering happens in the learning environment. So, if we take what are the different scenarios in which such course or such learning could be designed? So there are labs where tinkering can happen to certain extent. Then you have projects, you have maker spaces which are actually out of class tinker lab kind of an example, and hackathons which are more real world because the problems are situated in the real world and it is a out of class kind of an experience. So again, let's take a minute here. Now we know that we can directly engage in engage in experiences with the physical world through tinkering, where we can explore, experiment, create, and discover through it. But we still, how do we really harness it to solve real world problems? So this brings us to the next part of the talk, which is learning to interact with the real world and which is learning to solve sustainability development problems. So what are real world problems? Okay, we have seen problems, we have seen ill structured problems, open ended problems, as we were talking about tinkering also. But the thing with the real world problem is that now you have to actually engage with communities and the context there in which these problems are. So real world challenges are more complex, messy, and often very ill defined. What are some real world problems? Climate action, zero poverty, hunger, quality of education. These problems, also more commonly known as grand challenges, have been defined by United Nations Sustainability, have been identified by the Nations Sustainability Development Goals. And I have been fortunate to have been part of two courses which actually deal or which actually try to tackle learning in such grand challenges. The two courses are Grand Challenges Impact Lab by University of Washington. Now, this course is actually for students of University of Washington in Seattle, which gives them an opportunity to come to Bangalore, India for uh, 10 weeks. And they, in those 10 weeks, they try to understand and work with certain grand challenges. Now, this course actually pushes pushes them to think beyond borders, which is literally and even figuratively. Whereas the second course, which is the Innovation Lab and Grand Challenge Studios, which is a set of courses actually offered by Plaksha University for their undergraduate engineering cohort. Now, this spans for almost 6 semesters. Now, we see that both of these courses are trying to address grand challenges, but they do it in their own way. So whether we are working across or within borders, what these courses actually allow us to do is, or rather allow the learners to do is actually think and understand what potential impact means. So just to give you a brief idea about the courses, the Grand Challenge Impact Lab, which is the GCIL course, is a 15 credit course, runs for 10 weeks. It usually takes around 20 to 25 students, which are international students who come to India. This is an elective course, and the focus of the course is impact, right? The ILGC, which is a set of a number of courses, is entirely 12 credits. It runs through 6 semesters. It's actually taken by 200 students of the university, which is common for the first 3 semesters, and it works as an elective for the next 3 semesters. Here, the focus is on innovation. So I'll talk about these courses one by one. Let's start with the Grand Challenges Impact Lab course from University of Washington. So the Grand Challenge, so this course is actually offered to the senior and the senior undergrads, which is I mean, in our context, it would be the third and ideally the fourth year engineering undergrads, and also the master students. So this is a very intense course. It's just 10 weeks. So basically, you have these set of students who fly into India in the first week of the year, first week of January, and right from day one, they are engaged into activities. What are these activities? They go into the field and learn about grand challenges. They basically experience these grand challenges. And throughout the course, what they do is they basically collaborate with different entities, different NGOs, different organizations which run different social ventures. They participate with them, they build such experiences, and through these, they try to build their own or design their own social venture around a problem that they have identified. Now, they are being mentored by these experts and professionals, and also they get an opportunity to pitch their idea, pitch their social venture idea for a funding. So, this picture basically comes from the most recent offering of which I was a part of. I don't happen to be in the picture because I was taking the picture. So now we can divide the entire course into three components, where the first component is week 1 to week 3. Now the week 1 to week 3 is very curated and is very intense. Like, you land with the time difference of 12 and a half 12 hours 30 minutes, and I mean that's a huge jet lag to recover from. But you directly go into the field. You are actually going into different organizations which are working to support hunger. You're going on trails to look at how trash travels throughout the city of Bangalore. How is trash recycled? You are working with or you are looking at how water conservation solutions are being implemented, right from a single house to actually regenerating the entire lakes. How is air pollution being dealt with? Then you go to different organizations. For example, this particular picture is from a place called Rise Banix, which basically creates certain tools. Here what the learners are doing is they are experiencing how these people basically bend bamboo to create different prosthetics out of it. Along with that, now there is another picture here where they are actually in a silk market to see how the entire chain of how silk is being produced, how it is manufactured into the thread, and then how it does it eventually go to the weavers and they create products out of it. They're also learning the business and how does the finances of everything work around it. Now here is an example of how does the similar thing happen with jaggery making. And they also get certain I would say lecture or workshop classes where they learn about design thinking, they learn about theory of change and such things. But these first 3 weeks, they are very well curated, and during these 3 weeks, they have everything is well defined. For they have did these immense number of experiences that they go through. The week 4 to 7 are not that created. They're a bit open ended. But now in week 1 to 3, all the set of students were going together as a group. But now these students have been divided into different groups, and now they have been linked to certain organizations or partners that the course works with. Right now, these groups, they go with these partners, they engage in whatever they're doing. For example, you have examples of how the groups are doing water conservation. Here is a filtration plant. How actually how is the supply chain of water, how does it work out? Similarly, here you have one example of, again, from the same group, which creates prosthetics. So here they are trying to see how a particular prosthetic is being built. And here we have one of the groups which is actually trying to follow the trail of how, trash gets recycled. And in this week 4 to 7, what they're also doing is they are discussing, what can they derive from these experiences, what are the challenges that they see, what are the problems that they see. Now this also happens when they volunteer with these organizations. They, assist them in the objectives or certain tasks that they are trying to do, and they always come back and have team meetings, discussions, and they, at the same time, they are trying to assimilate all these experiences and, build uh, and try to identify which is the problem that they want to work on, who are their customers, who are the stakeholders, and all of that. Now, once we move into week 8 to 10, these are also more intense weeks, because here is when they start formulating their solutions. With their solutions, they start going back to the organizations, talk to people, discuss their solutions. Then they talk to the stakeholders, they talk to customers, they build their first prototypes, they take feedback on their prototypes. And through all of that, they go through a number of iterations. I would say 6 to 7 iterations of the idea. And at the end of week 10, they pitch their idea, uh, like you pitch for investor funding, right? Now this course seems that, it's very open ended, and how do you actually, keep track of what's happening? So the course has been basically designed on these four aspects, which is: one, the problem; the customer; the solution; and how do you make your solution real, really trying to evaluate your solution. And it is supported. And how do the learners, get this structure? So at every phase, they have to keep thinking of certain questions that they are given for each of these parameters. Like for problem, who is your I mean who are the people who are affected by the problem? What is the problem? Why do you think it is an important problem? What is the evidence that you have? So they keep coming back to such questions, which kind of gives them a structure to go through the entire course. Now, if I want to synthesize, from the to the entire course, that this from my experience of the entire course. So I was a part of the instructors team. So I can actually put them into three buckets: experience, engage, and empower, where the week 1 to week 3 is when they experience challenges and empathize with the people who have been impacted by these challenges. They also explore ongoing efforts. They are given exposures to tools of design thinking and theory of change. The examples. They also learn to assimilate these experiences. Now, what we have seen is, learner, these are very intense experiences, and you really need time to process them. I mean, be it conceptually, what are the skills required to process them, or even emotionally. So they go through a lot in this 1 to 3 weeks. Uh, that's what I've termed as experience. Now, in the week 4 to 7, what they do is they engage more, because now they're working with their organizations and they're contributing to the efforts of the organization. Now, these organizations are trying from a lot, from a long time, to create an impact in certain areas. They try to identify problems. Now with this, they also explore things like what is the business model of the problem. They look at design thinking case studies, they look at lean startups, they look at, okay, what do we mean by some value proposition, and what are the different ways we can test certain models. These are happening not just uh, through conceptual classes, but they are actually doing it with the organization which are working in the field. And they also work with the organizations to figure out, what could be the possible solutions of the problems that they have identified, or even are these problems real, problems that, one would want to work on. And only in the last set, which is empower, they actually identify their theory of change. They try to build solutions and evaluate the, solution in terms of what social value does it bring, is it financially sustainable, and they evolve it through rapid development cycles. And they also pitch their solutions for products, right? And to if we look at it, so basically in the first phase, they build empathy. In the second one, they are actually, with this empathy, they are building their agency or belongingness to the problems as they go out with the different organizations, and they're trying to build and evolve their pitch or a solution through tinkering and co-design with the communities. Now I'll talk about the Grand Challenges Impact, the Innovation Lab and Grand Challenges studio at Plaksha, which is a set of certain courses. So this is a brief introduction of what the Grand Challenges Studio is. It's basically a project-based learning throughout the year. So the idea from Plaksha was that instead of having one project every year, you have one project which you work on, throughout the years, and you actually build something innovative out of it. Now, this course or this studio is actually going into iterations. It's a very new idea, and a lot of it of how to conduct such a course or something like this is unknown. So this is from the time when while I was at Plaksha and we were designing the course. So basically, now it has been divided into two cycles where you have semester 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3 are actually focusing on students for them to learn certain skills. Basically, the first semester 1, 2, 3 are divided into explore, experience, engage, and the second 4, 5, 6 semester is when you again associate yourself with certain problem that you you really feel passionate about, or you go to certain organization and you for 3 semesters you really work on that problem to build some solution. Now I'll talk about what the first 3 semesters look like. So semester 1 is in semester 1, which is experience, explore, engage. Semester 1 is basically you are taken into different talks, you are a part of a lot of interactions, debates, you go on guided field trips, and you do reflections, and all of this is built around grand challenges. So basically water conservation, you go to different areas to see how water conservation is happening. You talk to different NGOs, and they come and talk about what the efforts they are making. In the second semester, you are looking at certain activities which are in the class and certain field trips that you as a group and individually you will go out and perform. So what do we do here? We actually give them certain tools like how do you make open-ended observations, how do you do open-ended interviews, and through these tools they go out with a focus question and they collect these observations to define problems. Okay, we are not talking of solutions here, we are only talking of problems. And only in the third semester they pick one of the problems that they defined, and then they try to evaluate it in terms of does it build social value, or does it, and is it financially viable. So they basically build a prototype, they go into the field, and then they try to evaluate the solution and evolve it. And only, so I was talking about, so there are two cycles. This cycle basically focuses on upskilling them. Now in the next cycle they may choose to work with the same problem, or choose a different problem that they feel more connected with or engage with. Now I was the instructor for the second semester, the second cycle, where second semester of the first cycle. So just to give you an idea of how this works out, so here it's a very different class because it's 200 students and all of them are undergrads, first year. So what happens is we conducted this course, one as a lecture class where we would talk about, okay, for example, how do you do open-ended observations, or how do you take an open-ended interview, which was followed by two classes of basically dividing the class into two parts, and they would uh, be given a focus question. For example, okay, go and look at how does the canteen work or the mess operate, and then they would go out for 2 hours and do open-ended observations. They would interview people and they would come back with whatever findings they have. So we would do such exercises, and then once we are done with that, we move into the second phase where we are given where the learners are given some focus questions like, for a particular city, how does healthcare work in that particular city, or how does transportation work in that particular city. So they go out as a group on a field visit with these skills and tools of open-ended observation, design thinking, and unstructured interviews. And they do these, they collect data based on it, and then they come back and report what their findings are. And through these reports, we provide them feedback, and they probably go up, if required, they go again on another trip and collect more data. And they present all of it in the end as an exhibition. So this exhibition happens at the end of the semester. So this exhibition basically talks about problems based on their focus questions. So for example, they are looking into transportation. So what are the challenges from transportation they have observed? Now, once the semester gets over and they go for different summer trainings, they go back to their homes. There, they work individually with the same focus question and do observations, but in a different location, right? And that they present as a viva. So here is an example of when the students were setting up their exhibition, which is the team exhibition. And here are some examples of how did they present their, the problems that they discussed. For example, one of the one that you can see here is about waste management. So one other interesting thing to look at is they are given the same instructions, they get given the same tools. They are taught how to, how to work with empathy maps. Just an example. But what you see here is every team has taken, their own ideas and presented their story in their own manner. So, I mean, what the mandate given to them is that they have to present their story, they have to put empathy maps, but it's not defined how do you do it. So, they take complete, ownership of how do they want to present, and we see that there are so many different ways of presenting the same, type of information. So this really talks about, having the open-ended, I mean, the task being open-ended enough to for them to have their own agency into building solutions. So now these, the ones you see on top are basically some the ones you see on top are basically some examples of some focus questions that they worked when they were when they were doing their individual observations. Now, coming to what are the synthesis from this experience. Now, here I'm trying to synthesis what are the outcomes. So, in the previous course, what I talked about was the synthesis of uh, the process, but here what I'm talking about is synthesis of the outcomes. So, the outcomes can be seen in terms of conceptual, operational, and effective. So, the conceptual is uh, they were able to understand what is the complex grand challenge. They were able to deepen their understanding of the systems and the concepts around it. For example, how does water public health work? At the same time, they gained operational insight, which is basically they build certain skills of using the design thinking tools, sense of how do you interact with people, how do you do observation and inquiry, and how do you reflect and assimilate these, findings. And on the affective level or the emotional side of learning, they developed confidence in processing these experiences. They empathized with the impact, and they generated a sense of responsibility. So again, if you look at it, so these were more in terms of their agency and their collaboration, agency and their co-design, and empathy. So what are the takeaways from these, learning in or with the real world? So here, as teachers, what we can do is motivate with real life experiences to build empathy. We can scaffold processing of learners' experiences through mentorship, through building structure, with pedagogy. Trust learners with their learning path and ideas, which is letting them develop agency. Create a learning environment where they can experiment. Uh, we talked about tinkering, and provide some structure to express and build their ideas. You can build a structure in terms of design thinking. TOC helps you build that structure to, or a means to express your whatever your idea is. And what is also very important is we have to be careful about what our objective is. Is it learning to solve, or is it the solution? Do you want to evaluate the solution, or do you want to evaluate the learning? And most of such courses would are more real world, out of class, with some in classes and little simulated or theoretical immersion. So what do we take from all of this, which brings us to the last part? What are the takeaways? So technology, I mean, for the entire talk, technology helps visualize abstract concepts of the physical world. Tinkering allows agency driven iterative explorations, experimentation in the physical world. Experiencing grand challenges through community interaction builds empathy, and empathy builds agency and a deep understanding of challenges. And a tinkering mindset driven by agency enables discovery of possible solutions. And co-designing solutions with communities while ensuring social acceptability and financial viability makes an impact, becoming a medium of change. So now, if we actually look at Tinkery, GSIL, and ILGC that we talked about, and we look at them in terms of structure, we see the similarity, even though they are very different things. The similarity, lies in the three phases, you could call, which is inspire with empathy, engage with agency, and keep creating with tinkering, which also aligns to one of the models from the tinkering studio or exploratorium, which talks about sparking interest, sustaining, and then deepening that interest. So what can you do with all of this? So as teachers or as designers for curriculum, for classes, focus on problem solving, empathy, and interdisciplinary thinking. Incorporate tinkering and field based activities, balance between simulations and real world experiences. Let students drive projects with mentorship, support, use iterative processes, use principles of human centered design and real world problem framing. We just talked about structures, problem exploration, ideation, and real world application and reflection. And foster teamwork with external partners and assess based on social technical impact. But focus on making learning real, relevant, and reflective. So, what would your course, class, workshop, or curriculum look like on the quadrant? Or what would be your phases? What would be your three phases of the course, class, workshop, or curriculum? What would they look like? So, you have that freedom to choose. But most importantly, what you should definitely do is go build your own version of such a course, which is close to the real world, out of class, in class, based on what you desire. And to help you do with it, there are a more detailed set of cheat sheets and some examples and instructions that I have, which I will be sharing through this document in some way, or I can put it up on my website. You can refer that. So, okay, so what do I mean by learning beyond borders? I mean, definitely not that learners, sit outside the classroom while the classes go inside the borders of the classroom. And also definitely not, I mean, I'm not trying to encourage or discourage, going out of geographies to, complete your education and all that. But what I mean by learning beyond borders is breaking traditional boundaries of physical spaces and disciplines, hands-on experimentation to foster creativity, resilience, and ownership, empowering students to take charge of their learning journey, understanding real-world challenges through human-centered approaches, combining tinkering, agency, and empathy to create impactful solutions, equipping learners to think beyond borders and design meaningful changes, and most importantly, have fun while you do all of that. So that's it for my masterclass. Thank you. And thank you at Tech Society for giving me this opportunity.
Wonderful, wonderful, Dr. Ashutosh. You have given a pathway for the teachers to design their courses and how they can actually start thinking in terms of problem. So, as a teacher of economics, I often face problem that what kind of pedagogy, let's say,
Mhm,
I will implement
mhm,
so that the teaching learning process is seamless and student gets out of
mhm,
whatever I'm saying.
mhm,
Uh, So let me ask the first question. Let me get
Okay.
the opportunity to ask the
Sure.
first question. And
Sure.
meanwhile, if you see there are questions, then we'll display in the portal. Uh, One of the questions that recently, in last maybe 1 or 2 years, the emergence of generative AI portals
Yes.
like ChatGPT and
Yes.
Bing or maybe Gemini, they have somehow changing the dynamics of teaching learning processes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you just explained, so I see this as a problem. How this as a problem, any phenomena, any topic, anything I am going to explain, students are already asking ChatGPT about the same.
Mm-hmm.
So now in this era of emergence of AI, how this process is going to help? Can you just add
Okay.
this model to the generative AI part?
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that question. And so this is a challenge which is also something that we are dealing with. But at the same time, it is also, so how I see it is the perspective that you take with generative AI. I mean, do you see it as something that you have to, have certain guards so that your students don't just keep using that? Or is it something that you can also incorporate in your learning or teaching, or I mean, in your pedagogy? So, what are the different ways you can incorporate it? Can you do, say, can you build something where you can keep asking questions to it, and through that process, learn to, get to learn about that concept? I mean, this is just an example of it. So, it actually take, what what is really important, especially with generative AI, is what perspective you take with uh, such a platform to say. Um,
Fantastic.
does it, to some extent, answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it requires, as you said, it requires thinking. I mean, we as a teachers need to start thinking that how, where, when we can integrate these type of technologies into
Yep.
the
And this is an
educational landscape.
ongoing challenge. I mean, it is challenging to how do you integrate that. I mean, I was just giving an example, but
Yes,
I mean, what are the ways that you can encourage the use of it in the correct way? I would say. I mean, these
ethical
are
way.
technologies that are here to stay. So, I mean, you have
Yes,
to get used to it. You have to learn, but you have to
absolutely.
learn how
We
to
yes,
they
we
support
cannot
you.
say true,
Yes.
true. We cannot say that don't use Chat
Yes.
GPT. We
Yes.
have to see how we can implement and the learning continues. I mean,
Yes.
learning is
Yes.
efficient for the
Yes.
students. Another question I would like to ask is about the course. Now,
Yes.
the course, Grand Challenge course, is it open for anybody? Is there any criteria for joining?
Okay. So I'm assuming you're talking about the Grand Challenge in Impact Lab for from University of Washington course.
Yes.
Okay. So that course is offered as an elective for the students of University of Washington.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's an elective. One of the criteria is that you have to be a senior year student or a master's student to come to that course. I mean, it's basically some logistics, and also you have developed certain skills. You have some understanding of your field there. So I mean, that's basically how the course is designed. So that's the requirement of that course.
So basically, it's not a MOOC. It's
And
an
it's not a MOOC.
closed. It's a
Yeah,
private MOOC kind of. Yeah.
it's not. It's something that. So as I was saying, so these 20 students, they come to India physically.
Huh.
They be in Bangalore for 10 weeks, and it's a very immersive and a very intense course. I mean, for the instructor as well as for the students.
All right. So as I can see, we have already exceeded 1 hour,
No,
and
I mean,
so I would like to say on behalf of EdTech Society of India, Dr. Ashutosh, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, ideas, and your own experiences, learning experiences about tinkering, about how we can design, we as a teachers can design courses and the couple of courses that you shared. Wonderful, and I'm sure that the audience definitely will learn many things from this conversation. And in case they need anything from you, I'm sure you have already showed your page and will definitely get in touch with you. Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Ashutosh, for your time and for sharing your experiences.
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Krishna, and thank you so much, Tech Society, for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the audience, just we would like to tell you that EdTech Society is going to conduct or organize an international conference in the month of December, 6 to 8. Do visit the website. You'll get more details about it, come and join us on December at IIT Gandhinagar. Thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day, Ashutosh. And for Indian audience, have a wonderful evening. See you and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.